Detroit doesn't ask for permission when the window is open. And tonight has that same shiver in the air. The kind you feel in your chest before a franchise makes a grown man move that changes how. January football looks in the trenches, so lock in with me on Lions News Fan Report. Because I'm taking you right to the whiteboard. What's really happening with our interior? Why left guard has quietly become the hinge of this roster. How the trade market sets prices at the deadline, where the cap math breathes. And why one specific veteran could turn our protection plan and run efficiency from good enough to survive into mean enough to dictate. First, the promise of the next few minutes so you know exactly what you'll get without me blowing the headline. I'm breaking down the health picture inside. The rotation stresses that have turned a medium priority into a siren. The 2 or 3 viable paths the front office can walk. And then I'm bringing the name that ties the bow right when it matters, with tactical detail you can feel on Sunday. Here's the frame. The trade deadline always asks the same question. Do you buy certainty or do you rent variance? And the Lions' recent history under Brad Holmes has been crystal about the answer when the roster earns belief. This is the 3rd straight year Detroit sits on the buyer's side of the scale, not because of impulse, but because this team knows exactly what it is when the middle of the pocket is clean and the A and B gaps are honest. The problem you and I have been feeling since week 9 is not theoretical. Injuries and inconsistencies have forced musical chairs at guard and center. And the drop-off from cohesive 5 to patch 5 shows up in everything sacks, avoided by timing instead of structure. A run game that starts a step late on combos, and a screen game that loses that first escort on the alley. The Titans? Kevin Zeitler is out there as a tidy reunion, but flipping sides across a decade of habits has real friction and veterans like Evan Brown or Nick Allegretti raise the floor without pushing the ceiling. That's why the search keeps circling back to a left side specialist who doesn't need an interpreter on day one. Now feel the suspense build. Because this is where need meets opportunity. The cleanest solution on paper is also the heaviest to pry loose a 7-time Pro Bowler. 2-time All-Pro, the model of availability and game-over-game consistency. A player who lives at left guard and hasn't blinked in noise or cold. I'm talking, of course, about Joel Bitonio of the Cleveland Browns. And I'm not dropping that as fantasy. I'm laying it on the table because the market logic actually tracks. His contract is effectively a 1-year commitment for an acquiring team if they want it that way. There's a responsible exit route after the ring chase, yet that same flexibility means you will not steal him with pocket change. That's the premium tax on certainty. Now, why Bitonio specifically for Detroit and not just a guard? Because the way we win when it matters is brutally simple. Clean front doors for the quarterback. Violent double teams that climb with timing. Backside cutoffs that shut down pursuit angles. And pulls that arrive square on linebackers without drifting. Bitonio's tape is a clinic in those exact things. His short set discipline on play action keeps the depth of the pocket honest so the launch point doesn't slide into chaos. His feel for hip-to-hip combos lets the center snap to second level on schedule. And his lateral recovery saves plays when a 3-tech spikes hard inside. You want a stat that turns into feeling? Durability is a trait, not a coincidence. He's missed 2 games since 2017. You want a detail that translates directly to points? Watch how screen timing lives or dies based on the first escort's angle. Bitonio gets out clean, stays square on safeties, and turns 4-yard safety valves into 7s and 8s because the runner is hitting the crease at full speed instead of checking feet in traffic. Slot him at LG, and you stabilize the seam between Taylor Decker and the pivot, which doubles as your launch lane for duo. Wide zone with a jab step, and counter when you want to punish edges that overflow. The price conversation lives in the real world, though. So let's talk brass tacks without flinching. Top option equals top capital, and Detroit already lacks a 2026 third-rounder. That matters. But Holmes has traded with Cleveland before Zadarius Smith says hello, so there's a template for structure and trust. What does a Bitonio deal look like if it's sensible? Something in the band of a 2027 Day 2 chip with protection, or a 2026 Fort that escalates with team performance and snap share. Maybe a small player swap to meet value optics. The Browns know his worth, and they'll ask for respect. But they also understand the calculus of selling an aging star on a contract that a buyer can treat as a tight window play. Cap-wise, Detroit can fit the remainder of this year with modest maneuver imperation and a tiny restructure. On the edges if needed and roll into. Spring clean because there's no obligation to carry. The full freight if the plan is short. The staff piece is equally important, so I'm taking you onto the field now, chalk in hand. With Bitonio at LG, the Lions regain permission to call the inside menu that makes this offense look like itself. Duos that cave a two-eye and climb to the mic. Mid-zone from gun, where the LG's reach buys the RB a two-way read. And true gap with the puller wrapping tight, so the first hat on the backer is square instead of reaching. Pass game, the middle goes from squeaky to steady. Interior twists get passed off without panic, and the QB can hitch once and rip the opposite hash on dagger without trying to drift away from phantom pressure. You also feel it on fourth quarters, where rush teams empty the clip. Bitonio has the poise to turn those late-game stunts into nothing but noise. Even the red zone gets a lift, more confidence to call GT counter from condensed sets, more trust to run crack toss knowing the inside seal holds, and better odds on quick-hitting slants because the pocket doesn't compress on the release. He also brings an edge without drama. There's leadership here that doesn't need a microphone practice standards, meeting room tips for younger linemen, little things like hand placement on low red reach blocks that stop penetration before it starts. And yes, there are the reasonable worries. Age curves are undefeated, and you're not trading for a rookie contract. This is a veteran rental at a premium position. Chemistry can wobble in week one of a new set. And anytime you move a big name, the expectations walk in holding a megaphone. That's why the staff's plan would be surgical. Install core calls he already knows. You don't need to teach him how to run duo. Rep the pass-off language on stunts all week with the center. Keep the first game plan simple 3 or 4 staple runs your day one play action. And to screen the room likes most and let the man's professionalism do the rest. The alternatives are still on my board, and I'm not ignoring them. Zeidler is plug-and-play tough, but he's lived at right guard, and moving a vet to the opposite side midseason costs reps you don't have. John Simpson offers a buy low shot with recent upside, but you're betting on 2024 take holding when everything around him has been chaos. Evan Brown gives you the Swiss Army depth at LGC, but likely stabilizes the floor rather than changes the game. Allegretti carries 3 rings of postseason habits, yet arrives as a role player, not a ballast. None of these are bad options. They're just not Bitonio, who gives you the one thing a contender values most at the deadline: the right to call your best stuff when the opposing DC knows what's coming. And that's the whole point of this January. Ball is less about tricks and more about whether you can run your identity against someone trying to steal it from you. If you land Bitonio, you don't reinvent the plan, you stop apologizing for it. There's also a cultural echo I don't want to skip. The Lions built this era on trench investment draft capital up front, second contracts for the right core, and a stubborn refusal to treat O-line as a place for duct tape. Trading for a true left guard in the middle of a real window says to the locker room, we're finishing what we started. To the backs, it says, your reads will be honest. To the QB, it says, step up, not out. To the defense, it says, your fourth quarter rush count gets help because we're holding leads with first downs, not punts. And to the fan base, yes, to you, it says we're not leaving this season to ifs and hope. We're buying the part the calendar doesn't give you. Let me land this clean because I know you came for the bottom line. My analysis. Quick and straight if the price sits in the 2026 Ford plus 2027 conditional range or protected 2027 Day 2 pick. I make the call for Joel Bitonio, and I don't look back. Because the delta between patched and premium at left guard is the kind of hidden yardage that wins in January. If Cleveland pushes into unprotected Day 2 plus sweetener, I pivot to a cheaper floor raiser and live with the variance. Because the organization's long-term discipline is part of why we're even here. Now, I want your read. Right here. Right now. Would you pay the premium for immediate, elite left guard play that locks our identity for the stretch run? Or would you hold the line, spread the risk across depth moves, and trust development to catch up by December? Drop your take below with your price, your preferred package, and the first 3 calls you'd install with Bitonio at LG. If you ride with us, smash that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell. I'll be on the wire all week, so your heart never misses a beat, right here on Lions News Fan Report.